What our ancestors discovered in the shadows was never meant to be revealed. Ancient texts warn of rituals so powerful they drove seekers to madness, or worse. These weren't just ceremonies. They were gateways. The plants, the sacrifices, the blood, all doors to something beyond our world. What if the most dangerous spiritual practices weren't hidden from us as punishment, but as protection? In the next 10 minutes, I'll reveal evidence of mind-altering ceremonies so dangerous that those who practiced them disappeared. Are you ready to see what they found on the other side? Or will you stay in the dark while others discover the truth? We're about to cross a line. There's no turning back after this. In remote Chinese mountains during the Tang Dynasty, there existed a secret group called the Cold Bone Cultivators. These weren't your typical peaceful monks. These people practiced what scholars nervously call corpse meditation, where students would spend 9 nights lying on top of recently deceased bodies, absorbing what they believed was escaping life energy. Official records, kept sealed until the 1950s, described practitioners who could lower their body temperature to near freezing while staying fully awake, something modern doctors say should be impossible. Ask yourself, why was this practice completely erased from history books, while other Taoist traditions were allowed to spread? What did these practitioners discover in that space between life and death that frightened the powerful so deeply? Think about that the next time you casually download a meditation app. Some doorways to enlightenment were sealed shut for very specific reasons. Let's travel to ancient Mesopotamia, where the Asherite priestesses practiced what scholars politely call threshold rituals. These women built sealed underground chambers, partially filled with water containing extract from black henbane and mandrake root. They would float in absolute darkness for 7 days and nights, caught between wakefulness and sleep. Ancient clay tablets describe how these priestesses could see through time and speak with voices not their own. When Alexander the Great conquered these lands, he didn't just ban these practices out of religious intolerance. He ordered the chambers destroyed and the practitioners executed after one priestess allegedly told him exactly when and how he would die. Sometimes knowing too much can be dangerous, especially when it reveals truths we're not ready to face. In the isolated fjords of pre-Christian Norway, researchers have found evidence of the Svin rituals, where those seeking mystical knowledge would hollow out ancient oak trees, seal themselves inside with only tiny breathing holes, and drink a broth made from bog myrtle and magic mushrooms. Norse stories tell of warriors emerging after 3 days with the wisdom of ravens and the ability to fight without any fear. Modern science shows that sensory deprivation can create deep meditative states, but when you add powerful hallucinogens and extreme confinement, well, there's a reason these techniques aren't offered at your local yoga studio. Perhaps most disturbing were the practices of the khipu mystics of ancient Peru, whose existence was deliberately wiped out by both Incan and later Spanish conquerors. These practitioners created complex knotted cords not just for record keeping, as your history books claim, but as maps for altering consciousness. By manipulating these knots in specific patterns while entering trance states, they claimed to access what they called the architecture of reality. Evidence suggests these mystics would pierce their tongues, ears, and even eyes with copper needles connected to their khipu knots, creating what they believed was a circuit between mind and universe. Spanish accounts describe encountering khipu masters who could predict earthquakes weeks before they happened or influence weather patterns, abilities so threatening that practitioners were hunted nearly to extinction. Were these simply primitive superstitions, or had these ancient cultures discovered brain technologies we're only beginning to understand? Our nervous systems haven't changed in thousands of years. Whatever they accessed then still exists within us today. Deep in Central Australia, Certain Aboriginal initiation ceremonies remained hidden from outside researchers until the late 1980s. These rituals involved extracting and consuming pineal gland tissue from kangaroos, combined with days of didgeridoo sound vibrations at specific frequencies. Participants reported experiencing what they called dreamtime physics, an understanding of reality beyond normal time and space. When Western scientists tried to study these practices, tribal elders demonstrated abilities that defied explanation, including shared dreaming, where multiple people could accurately describe identical dream experiences in perfect detail. These studies were suddenly defunded in 1994, all published papers mysteriously retracted, and classified under national security protocols that still exist today. What did they discover that warranted such extreme scientific censorship? In hidden Tibetan valleys, beyond the well-known Buddhist traditions, the Ngakpa sorcerers developed practices involving controlled freezing and breath control that modern medicine would consider impossible. These practitioners would submerge themselves in frozen lakes for hours without harm, using specific mental images to redirect blood flow and create internal heat. Even more extreme were the sky burial meditators, who spent months visualizing their own bodies being cut apart and fed to vultures, not as some metaphor, but as preparation for actual death rituals. These practitioners claimed they could separate their consciousness from their physical body at will, experiencing what scientists might call controlled out-of-body experiences. Chinese authorities have systematically destroyed most evidence of these practices since taking over Tibet, perhaps fearing people who couldn't be controlled through physical means. The ancient Greeks whispered about the Orphic mysteries. These weren't the famous Eleusinian rituals open to many citizens, but far more extreme practices for those seeking complete transformation. Participants would undergo ritual drowning and revival, experiencing clinical death before being brought back through specific breathing methods. This process, repeated with increasing duration, supposedly allowed consciousness to leave and return to the body at will. Plato hints at these practices in coded language in his writings, seemingly random passages that, when understood by initiates, contained instructions for these death-rebirth rituals. When Christianity gained power in Rome, practitioners of these mysteries were specifically targeted, not for worshiping false gods, but for claiming humans could achieve divine consciousness without priests as middlemen. Perhaps most disturbing are the practices discovered in sealed rooms beneath the ancient city of Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley. Evidence suggests ritual spaces where people engaged in what scholars reluctantly call collective consciousness engineering. Specialized chambers show signs of controlled sound frequencies, specific geometric patterns, and residue of compounds from plants now extinct. So why am I bringing this knowledge to light now? Because humanity stands at a crossroads. Our technological powers have outpaced our wisdom. We've created tools that can destroy civilizations without developing the consciousness to use them responsibly. Perhaps these ancient mind technologies contain wisdom we desperately need for survival. I'm not suggesting you try these extreme practices. Most led to madness or death for the unprepared. But understanding that such doorways exist might inspire us to look beyond the sanitized, commercialized spirituality that fills our social media feeds. The ancients knew something we've forgotten, that real transformation requires risk, that comfort keeps things exactly as they are, and that touching the divine has always meant crossing thresholds most people fear to approach. They weren't looking for weekend wellness retreats or inspirational quotes. They were rewiring the fundamental relationship between consciousness and reality. As we finish this journey through the shadows of spiritual history, ask yourself, what truths might exist beyond the boundaries of your comfortable reality? What aspects of consciousness remain hidden within you, waiting for the right key to unlock them? The most dangerous idea of all may be this. What if enlightenment isn't about finding peace or happiness, but about encountering a reality so vast and uncompromising that it shatters every illusion we cling to for comfort. The darkest spiritual practices throughout history understood this fundamental truth, that awakening isn't gentle, and the brightest light casts the darkest shadows. Perhaps the bravest act isn't seeking light, but having the courage to face what that light reveals. Until next time, fellow seekers, remember that every spiritual tradition you know has hidden depths that few are brave enough to explore. The question isn't whether you should follow these forgotten paths, but whether you're prepared for what happens when conventional reality falls away. Some doors, once opened, transform you forever. Are you ready to see what lies beyond?